Good afternoon. This is not a test. Do not get worried, it is a Thursday. My name's Kevin Graham, and as usual on a Thursday, ACSOM welcome JP Mason. JP, okay. What's happening today?
Well, doing this and then off to work after it for the first of five nights of work in a row. No football to worry about anymore, which is weird to not have a game at the weekend and be planning my life around that. But it's been football and music since we've come back to reality, and for the next couple of months it'll just be music.
Who's on the night? Who you on the night, or is it just
Surfboard?
Surfboard.
A punk band. I think they're American, probably American, and they've got Tony Hawk, the skater, in their latest video. So
wow.
Random. I don't really know too much more about them, but supported by a band called Witch Fever, who again kind of punk rock. So if that's your bag, come down to King Tut's tonight. There's still tickets available. Absolutely
fantastic names. I love the band names. They've put a lot of thought into their band names. I love that, and they have got a kind of punk connotation when you actually do say that. Anybody in the comments, anybody listening, go and check them out. Maybe you'll find yourself down at King Tut's tonight. JP, as usual, I'm worried. I worry about local things, and I worry about things all the time, Really, really worried. And I'm worried about my local shops, and you'll be in your local shops as well. Because basically, last year, they sell some amount of fireworks for gullible fans to set off in the daylight. And they haven't had that trade this year. So,
well, you say
what are we going to do to save our local shops?
I don't know, man. I saw quite a lot of fireworks being set off outside Celtic Park the night we drew at Penalties. I was back at Celtic Park that night, and it was it was like the 4th of July. So they done all right, but maybe not as all right as last year, because last year was just kind of ridiculous. Like you say, fireworks going off in the daytime was a bit mental. But I'm sure they'll get by with what they've sold this year, and they better be stockpiling hopefully for next year as well.
Aye. I mean, I must admit, in the People's Republic of Stirling, about 11 o'clock last Wednesday night, there was a lone firework display up the top of Colton Hove, a place in Stirling, And I reckon the guys or the girls that were setting off those fireworks were probably wearing that top that is sitting behind your shoulder. But
yeah,
it's just not a random bam up. You have got a link to Frankfurt.
I mean, I've been to Frankfurt a couple of times. Spent some time there a few years ago. Never made it to a game, but I've always had a loose affinity with Eintracht Frankfurt, and I was certainly strengthened last week. And let's not kid ourselves on. If it was the other way around, there would be Eintracht Frankfurt tops behind other podcasts of a certain persuasion. So I'm not going to deny that I took great delight in their victory last week. And it's just part and parcel of being a rival fan, isn't it?
It is. As long as it only stays as that banter and doesn't get too serious, and we all keep well hydrated. But like last night, I watched the Conference League final last night, and I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, were you jealous of Roma and Frankfurt last week winning a European trophy? And when you watch Jose Mourinho walking about that park last night, holding up his five fingers to say that he's won 5 European trophies with 4 different clubs, there's only one player ever scored against a Jose Mourinho team in a final, and we can all guess who that was. They didn't seem that bothered. The celebrations in Rome didn't seem that bothered that it was meant to be a third-rate competition. Were you in any way whatsoever jealous of Frankfurt and Roma? Especially Roma. We ended up in that competition.
And
and there was a lot of people turned their nose up at that competition. Didn't it seem that way last night for Roma to celebrate their first ever European trophy?
Not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a trophy that, whilst it might not be the pinnacle of European football, it's still a tournament where if you get to the final and you win it, you've beaten some decent teams to get there. And fair enough, Roma haven't beaten the cream of the crop to get to the final. They lost to Bodo Glimt heavily in the group stages, and then subsequently beat them in the knockouts. So it's having been at a European final and actually been there to witness Celtic lose in Seville. The feeling that you have when you're there is I can't really describe it. I remember that day and night really, really well, and I remember how gutted I was when we were walking out the ground having lost. I think when we went down to 10 men, it kind of seemed like the writing was on the wall that it was going to be the case. But when you've experienced the dejection of losing a final, and at that stage, I think the UEFA Cup was probably a loftier trophy than it is now. I think the way that they've redesigned it has probably made it less so, given some of the teams that have made it there to the final, some of the teams that have won it. I wouldn't exactly call Eintracht Frankfurt, despite the fact that I've got a shirt over my shoulder, I wouldn't call them a European superpower. Do you know what I mean? So,
but in the last 3 seasons, JP, they've got to a semi-final and a final, and obviously they've won a final, So they're on a bit of an upturn. Whether we like it or not, Rangers over the last 4 seasons have actually progressed in Europe as well. And we can't argue with that fact. But what you're saying there about leaving Seville, that's one of the worst walks I've ever had out a stadium. It was surpassed by Black Sunday at Motherwell. But that walk out the stadium Seville was absolutely horrible, and I wouldn't have wished it on anybody whatsoever. Well, it was all right last week, actually. I was quite glad that other folk were feeling the exact same as what I was feeling that I felt in 2003. But I wasn't jealous of the Rangers fans or the Feyenoord fans. I'm jealous of the Frankfurt fans and the Roma fans who have actually went there and won.
True. I don't think I could take a second dose of getting beaten in a final. I think when Rangers got there in 2008, I think they probably thought, well, this is our one shot at this in our lifetimes. We're probably not going to see this again. And then, lo and behold, they did. And then they got beat again. So to have two... So there's a generation of fans that have experienced 2 defeats in a European final, which, I mean, rivalry aside, that is hard to take as a football fan, just a football fan, full stop, to lose on that stage when you're that close to picking up a prize. I mean, let's not make any bones about it. If they'd won that, we'd never have heard the end of it for the rest of our lives.
No, it was relief. It was absolute relief more than anything that we can still talk about our civil experience.
Yeah.
And we do not have to put up with what I called it a couple of weeks ago, the utter nonsense that the press absolutely tried to start before they had even got there, and that's it. We can talk about it as well, and we can have a look at it. I actually think we can have a look at it more rationally now, that the fact that they never won it.
Well, I think looking at it, the way that the game went, I mean, you think about that chance towards the end with Ryan Kent, that was game, set and match at that point if they'd scored that. But what a save from Trapp, the keeper, and then I know penalties is a lottery, but I mean Eintracht Frankfurt's penalties.
I'm not having that. Penalties is no a lottery. Penalties is no, it's luck, it's a lottery. No. If you go and do your job well, you'll score a penalty. Aaron Ramsey failed to do his job. The five Frankfurt guys done their job.
Probably.
It's not a lottery. It's not a lottery.
I mean, it's no surprise that of the 5 players that stepped up to take penalties, a guy who's barely made a mark on the club since he signed after such a huge fanfare. I mean, all we heard in January was the greatest signing since Gascoigne on these shores, and this has really put Rangers on the map and put Scottish football on the map. And anybody that knows me at that time, I said, I do not believe this will be a successful signing for Rangers. I said he'd score 4 goals. He scored 2. And his contribution, all you needed to do was look at the guy's injury record in the previous couple of years. He barely played games back to back. So when you send a guy like that up to take a penalty, whose confidence isn't what it should be, and then it's no real surprise that he missed. But just going on back to our Seville trip, see, when I was there was exactly the same with the conditions and stuff like that. There was I couldn't get water. I didn't drink or eat anything in the ground. I met my mate Michael outside the ground, who'd bought a carry out, and he had a bag of cans, and he gave me a can, and that is the only drink that I had in Seville while I was there. Bear in mind, I was only there, from 5 o'clock till midnight, and then I was away. So I didn't get, to spend time in the city or anything like that. But yeah, there was nothing. The inside the ground was an absolute riot. I think the only thing I got inside the ground was a programme. My mate got me a programme from a kiosk that was specifically selling programmes, and that was it. So I mean, you're talking like nearly 20 years later, and a final in a boiling hot country is still the same. So I don't understand why there's been such a fuss kicked up about it, because we experienced the exact same thing. In the
stadium, and in the stadium as well, as you say, I can't really. But I was in the stadium, but I never went to get water or that in the stadium. I made the decision on the day of the game, really not to drink a lot of alcohol, because I wanted to remember the game.
Yeah,
and I kept myself hydrated during the day, the water and that. So I probably wasn't needing as much. What was your Seville story? How did you do it? Did you stay for a couple of days, or we stayed in Belmadina? We stayed in Belmadina from the Tuesday to the Friday, and we flew back into Heathrow on the Friday afternoon, and drove up, hired a car, and drove back up the road on a bank holiday weekend, and we got stuck outside Birmingham for 5 hours in a car, and I was nearly Michael Douglas. I was nearly and falling down. I sitting outside Birmingham for 6 hours, man.
Did you make Rugby Park on the Sunday?
No, I didn't have a ticket for Rugby Park on the Sunday. No,
I did. That was a hard day. That was a hard day to take. Especially hot in the heels of being in Seville and then going to Rugby Park and winning 4-0 but still losing the league was a tough one. I actually find that potentially tougher than the Motherwell game, just purely because it was so much in 1 week. I was an absolute emotional wreck on that bus back from. You've
got the Motherwell game, then the cup final, and no matter how much we want to try and dress that up, that cup final against Dundee United was terrible. And that was one of the worst cup finals that I've ever been at. It was flat, and when Martin announced that he was leaving as well, and the game wasn't up to much, it doesn't matter how much we dress it up. It's not a cup final that we talk about at any point, JP.
No, and I know exactly where I was for that cup final. I was in Birmingham to see Neil Diamond live. That's a
Neil Diamond?
I know. I mean, I know it's not the coolest person to say you like, but I've been a huge Neil Diamond fan for a long time. So what I would urge is please stop ruining Neil Diamond's songs. I mean, it's getting to the point where I can't listen to Sweet Caroline anymore for obvious reasons. And now they're saying it's going to be used for the Queen's Jubilee or something like that. I'm like, just choose any other song. Just leave Neil Diamond alone.
Did he write Sweet Caroline?
Aye. Yeah.
Did he write Sweet Caroline?
Neil Diamond's a one-man hit factory. He wrote I'm a Believer, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, Red, Red Wine. Like,
I can't about Red, Red Wine. I can't hear written that, aye.
Yeah, he's
I didn't care about I'm a Believer. Didn't they know that?
Yeah. Hit factory, Neil Diamond. But yeah, so I remember watching that game in the pub in Birmingham, in an Irish bar in Birmingham, and being quite disinterested and not being that gutted that I'd missed it, to be honest. Apart from the fact that it was Martin O'Neill's last game, wasn't it?
It was, aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
But I mean, you'd had enough highs with Martin O'Neill like really ridiculous highs in the Martin O'Neill sort of era that, you know, I myself, having seen most of them in person, I could let that one slide, that Scottish Cup final.
David Bradley comes in to back you up, JP. another Neil Diamond fan in the comments. Let's have a wee look at the comments. Paul Andrew Martin agrees with me. This lottery, SHIT, does my nothing. It's a free shot on goal unchallenged. I think the fact they say it's a lottery is a myth. I really do think it's a myth. If you're professional enough at your job, either you score, or if the keeper's professional enough at their job, they save it. And I think when you look at the Frankfurt penalties, it's you actually see 5 guys that turned up and absolutely do their job. And
so did the other Rangers players, though. The other 4 Rangers penalties were really good as well. Like proper, like Stephen Davis's penalty was like top bin, I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly. And so, like I said, you had one guy whose confidence probably wasn't anywhere near the levels of the other players in that team, and probably you saw the way he was kind of a bit kind of shy to celebrate the Scottish Cup. I don't think he really feels like he's part of that dressing room, just from the outside looking in. So when you've got a guy going up with that weight of responsibility to take a penalty in that level of game, and if you're not properly, you know, indoctrinated into the team and the dressing room, then there's going to be a far higher chance that you're going to miss that penalty. Although I wouldn't have put my house on it right enough, but I certainly didn't feel as confident for him as he stood up to take a pen as the rest of them. But
the last comment that we are going to talk about them, the last thing I'm going to mention is Aaron Ramsey is now replaced the super furry animals as my favourite Welshman. That's it.
Howard Marks for me. He's always
Howard Marks. He's a cool Welshman as well. Very cool.
We had him at Electric Circus, and he was like, it was him and John Sinclair. John Sinclair wrote that tune, "Breathe in Air." Oh, sorry, John Lennon wrote a tune called "Breathe in Air" for John Sinclair, and it was because John Sinclair got done for marijuana possession, and there was a big deal about it in the States. And Lennon wrote a song about him, and then so him and Howard Marks did this night at the Electric Circus, and we promoted it, and just to meet the guy, you know, and like I'd read his book before that, so I knew what his sort of past was, and then I'm sitting in the dressing room talking to him and stuff like that. It was absolutely amazing. So Howard Marks is there you go, Mr. Nice Guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah,
Mr.
legend.
Nice guy.
If you've not read his book, by the way, 100% one of the most fascinating stories you'll ever read about Mr. Nice. Obviously got made into a film with Risa fans, and it's worth a watch.
Xander Bloy, welcome Xander. I think Xander's still in Iraq, maybe, or he's back home now. Penalties are part of football. Some you win, some you lose. Turd Ferguson, Neil Diamond is okay, but I prefer Kenny Rogers. Jerry McCann, Neil Diamond is amazing. And Acrobat, holy moly, JP, Neil Diamond, I would never have guessed that. You're not as cool as I thought. Stephen Ray, let's get this back onto Celtic. The UEFA Champions League is great to be in, however, very few clubs can win it these days. The Europa League and Europa Conference League are realistic goals for clubs like Celtic, and I would like to see more European trophies in our cabinet. I want to get to another final, JP, but I want to win it. That is my goal. That's what I want to see for Celtic. Going at the Champions League next season, it doesn't matter what happens during the summer for me. I don't think we're a Champions League side. I do not think we're a Champions League side. I think getting out the group is going to be really, really tough. And there's part of me hopes that we drop into the knockout stages of the Europa League, and hopefully we can pop a decent fist in there. But really, at this precise moment in time, I'm fearing your Champions League campaign.
Well, I mean, you've got to look at how last season went, and the performance in Europa League, and then subsequently the Conference League. You couldn't possibly say despite what you might be excited about with in terms of the way that the squad's developed and the team's developed, there's no way you could look at, if you looked at the cold hard facts, if you were Alan Morrison and you were looking at the cold hard facts of Europe last season, there's no way you could suddenly say, oh well, we're going to make a fist of it in the Champions League and we'll be taking names and stuff like that in the Champions League. That's no way that's happening. It's going to depend on the draw, and looking at the pots, you're just like, I mean, it could be really, really unkind, as it has been to us. Several times in the past. We've had some horrendous draws in the Champions League. When you look at our group, and then you look at other groups, and you go, God, why couldn't we have been in that group? We would have maybe stood a chance, of doing something. But when you're going up against, PSGs and Barcelona at the time, were way ahead of anybody. I mean, how we got that victory, I will never know. In 2012, that's still one of the great anomalies of modern day football that we managed to do that. But yeah, we've come up against really, really tough teams and rarely had it easy at that level. And then obviously, as has been shown, we've struggled to even qualify for the thing, through the qualifiers. So those are massive obstacles for us as well. But despite that, I do think that we have a team that will at least try to do something. I don't think we're so bad that we're going to. I can't see us getting horsed 7-0, 6-0, all that. Maybe that's crazy to think that, but I can't see it under Ange Postecoglou. I think we'll give a good account of ourselves, but I don't think that'll be good enough to, top a group or finish second or anything like that.
Look, we can't go into it and no say that we're not going to give it a go. We can't go into it and no say we've got to try to get the positives out of this. We've got to try and enjoy this. I says to Paul yesterday, there's no money in that team got Champions League experience, and there isn't. Even Callum McGregor's experience is more Europa League and something like that. And we are going up a level, which is maybe just a season too soon in the Ange Postecoglou way. And that brings me to the summer. I mean, what are you actually expecting this summer? I mean, right, we've won the league. We won the league against a really, really strong opponent. And that for me gives this title more weight, actually. And I was thinking about this, like, for me, I'll ask you the question, what emotional weight does this title hold you?
What emotional what, sorry?
Weight. Like, does it, like, for me, this is a really individual title, right? Because I think I've just... This is a really individual title because it wasn't going for something else. It wasn't part of a treble. It wasn't part of going for 10 in a row. It was very unexpected. And we were up against one of the best Rangers teams ever in their history, or in their history, their best team in their history. It got to a European final. And for me, this title holds more emotional weight because of all those factors. It's very, very special because of all those factors. It rates as one of the greatest titles that I've seen.
Absolutely. Probably I would rank it as being the most enjoyable season I think I've had following Celtic. The only one that I would say more so was Martin O'Neill's first season, the treble season, because I was at every single game, home and away, league and cup, not European, but every single domestic game, and felt really part of that incredible comeback, like, from the season previous where we'd completely capitulated. The Barnes thing was a disaster. The signings had been a disaster under Barnes in the main. Raphael Scheidt being the poster boy for that particular transfer window. And then, so like this season, everybody wrote us off at the start. Nobody gave us a chance. The gloating and the showboating from the other side was unheard of. It was I'd never seen anything like that. You know, I couldn't remember anything as bad as that. So to win the title this season in the way that we did it, and the way that the signings came in, and I'll touch on that because I know it's just a random guy on Twitter who happens to be a Hibs fan, but this guy tweeted yesterday saying, "Oh, big wowee, Ange Postecoglou had 30 million, I think was the number he used to spend and to win the league. Of course he's going to win the league." And it's just like, that is the lamest and weakest argument I think I've ever heard, given that he actually sold players of a value, i.e. Ayer, Edouard, Christie, and, you know, made the most of the squad that he had as well, i.e. Ralston, McGregor, Turnbull, you know, got a tune out of guys that were already there, and then prudently spent money on players that he trusted and was able to integrate into his squad, which is what a good manager does. So to discredit Ange Postecoglou's title win because he spent, you know, 4 million on Starfelt, 4 million on Furuhashi, those guys could easily not have settled or fitted into the squad and become outcasts in the same way that Barkas has, in the same way that Ajeti has. And you go back further, there's other examples of Celtic managers who've come in and spent money and not been able to do the business.
Tony Mowbray been one of them.
Exactly. So you can't just go, "Oh well, you spend money, you should win the league." It doesn't work like that, you know. As Rangers found out many years ago when they were hosing millions, and then, you know, Martin O'Neill came.
If you look at the Chris Boyd argument and that Hibs fan argument, I mean, that Hibs fan argument, and it's the same with any team that goes, you bought the league. Well, you have a look at the teams that have back-pocketed us in Europe with similar budgets to your Hibs, your Hearts and your Aberdeens, your Copenhagen's, your Bodo Glints. Copenhagen and Bodo Glint would come into the SPA, would come into the Premiership and would compete to win the Premiership. They would. Any team that we've been put out of in Europe, your Malmos, teams like that, if you dropped them into the Scottish Premiership, they would compete to win that league. They're not finishing a distant third. They're not finishing a distant fourth like these teams. So all these wee diddy teams that come in, have a look at yourselves. Have a look at these clubs on the budget. How can they compete on a European level and also beat Celtic and beat, I'm only got to talk from a Celtic point of view, beat us quite regularly home and away, and you can't do it. Have a look in your own back garden. Then they comment about the mess in somebody else's.
No, I mean the previous.
Also the Chris Boyd thing with does back the debt, right? We spent £23 million, but we brung in, like, was it 30 odds or something like that? Whatever it was, there was a £10 million deficit, right? It's not as if we spent £24 million and we're sitting here at the end of the season, £24 million in debt.
Yeah. It wasn't an absolute Hail Mary, like throwing all this money at players. It was clearly, as much as you can slag the board, and obviously we have slagged the board, they've been financially prudent, you know, with how they've done it. I mean, I would argue that some of those players that wanted to leave should have left the season beforehand, and then they should have, you know, made the good recruitment that they did last summer, the previous summer. But we kept them on, and we saw what that did to our title challenge in season 2021. It was a disaster because you had, as Neil Lennon openly admitted, I've got players in there that don't want to be here. And why? You're not trying to tell me that anybody in the Celtic dressing room this season didn't want to be there. You know, I would be astonished if Ange Postecoglou was asked under oath, "Is there any players in your dressing room that don't want to be there?" And he said yes, because it certainly didn't seem that way to me. And you look at the camaraderie, and you look at the way that players are, you know, with each other, and you see, like, then recently, you know, like say Starfelt and Carter Vickers and Jota and Stephen Welsh going on holiday together, and, you know, he's really that's all new players that didn't know each other a year ago, do you know?
And even some of the players meeting up with Shane Duffy as well.
I see that. Was that Dubai?
I didn't ken. I was too blinded by the horrific shirts to actually notice where it was.
Aye, it did look like a Wham video or something like that. It was pretty funny, but no, look, I feel bad for Shane Duffy. He was the wrong guy in the wrong film at the wrong time, you know. And as he's proved this season, the team that he plays for finished 9th in the Premier League, in the English Premier League. So, you know, and he's contributed to that. So you can't say that he's that bad a player. I just think his confidence got knocked early on, and he never recovered. And he was playing in a team. Again, he was playing with players that didn't want to be there, which is not a good. It's not a good influence in the dressing room. It never has been, and it never will be. So.
No, definitely not. I often wonder when you see these pictures, especially the ones the week before with Jota, Carter Vickers and Anthony Ralston and Stephen Welsh and Ibiza, and you see Celtic fans going, "Oh, I hope they're all sitting next to the pool and they're trying to get Jota and Carter Vickers to sign." And I wonder, I was thinking to myself, going, what do they actually discuss round about the pool? It's not going to be telling them, you should come and play with us. There's probably more baller trying to get a picture with Wayne Lineker in some
that guy is unbearable.
Beach club or something like that. They're not going to be. Stephen Welsh is not going to be going to Jota. You need to sign for us, mate. You're going to need to stay. You're going to need to stay. That's not a conversation they're going to be having round about a pool.
Well, probably not. But I mean, the noises with regards to the strap line, the noises are certainly encouraging. That, you know, every day you're getting more and more so-called people in the know saying Jota's staying, it's done. You know, putting up wee Portuguese flags with like a thumbs up and all that, and you look at someone's profile that does that, and you're like, who are you to be saying that? Like, what? How do you know that? Like, you're putting up a fairly strong indication that you know for a fact that this guy's staying. And then, of course, there's the newspaper headlines as well saying that he's staying, and Carter Vickers, the talks are underway or are ongoing. You know, we just have to wait and see on both of them. But I mean, if we can keep a hold of both of them, that is absolutely massive, absolutely massive. I mean, I said at one point that Carter Vickers would be my choice if I was given, you know, one of the two. But you know, when you start hearing the noises that Jota wants to stay, you're kind of, all right, okay, well, be greedy and give us both of them then, because it just saves us going having to go out and having to find somebody else to integrate in that position. Because, I mean, not to make, you know, mad comparisons, but you see that the bond that is still there with the Lisbon Lions, you see that bond that they have, you know, so many years later, and you want that bond in a Celtic dressing room in present day, that, you know, the people know that they've got each other's backs on the park and stuff like that. You know, it really goes such a long way when you're trying to dig out a result away to Dingwall, away to Ross County or something like that. You want guys that are going to burst their gut to get that goal in injury time, or you know, make that long bursting run at the end of the game. And the closer the players are, then the more likely that is to happen.
It is, and I think Ange Postecoglou actually says that the dressing room takes care of itself. He doesn't really get too involved in that. Yeah. There's enough leaders in that, and you can actually see, that all of a sudden we all become like body language experts, and you say, oh, he's no trying, that one's no trying, but we have heard enough and we have seen enough that there was a number of players that wanted to leave and what became Neil Lennon's last season. And I think you see the difference now. You have got players that want to be there. I think as well, see, when you get to this time of year as well, I mean, we've got the internationals coming up. We've got players away on holiday. You see their holiday pics and all of that now, and they're coming back for international duty. If we're going to sign Jota and Cameron Carter Vickers, nothing will get announced until we come back for pre-season training. These boys, I think they're all due back in on June the 10th. I know Ange Postecoglou's back in on June the 10th. Nothing will get announced until everybody's back at Lennox time. I don't think so. I think we're going to be kicking our heels for another 3 weeks yet, wondering what's going to go on. This is just the way football works at this point. It's the same way all the players that we're getting linked with. It's all pinch of salt stuff. Nothing's going to happen. Guys' seasons are ending and they're going away on holiday. They're going to do stuff with their families and they're not going to think about doing anything else until their contracts end on the 30th of June or they come back for pre-season training. That is just the way it is. This is just like the dead zone that we're going to get because of the international games and people coming back for pre-season. And you're just going to get papers and fan media making up rubbish.
Well, with regards to people going, I mean, I watched the celebrations on the 14th against Motherwell, and Julien did cut a fairly, not dejected, but it was just a bit disconnected to everybody, which is understandable considering that he didn't contribute to the success, that we enjoyed because he didn't play, and apparently he's been fit since January. I think that was in an article that he said that. That he's been fit since January, and he can't really have any argument with not getting a game ahead of Carl Starfelt and Carter Vickers, because look at their defensive record this season. There's no way you could have expected him to just waltz back into the team and take his jersey. So I don't know. It'll be up to him whether or not he wants to stay and fight, or if he does want to go. But such a big outlay on him. 3 years ago we signed him? Was it three seasons? So I don't know what length of contract he signed, but I mean, surely it wasn't a 5-year deal. Maybe it was.
No, he's in his last year now. He goes into his last year this year. So if we're going to get rid of him, it's this summer that we've got to cash in on him. I mean, that is a question. I mean, has Ange Postecoglou badly managed Julien, or has Julien badly managed himself?
Well, I mean, Postecoglou hasn't got much wrong so far, has he, in terms of the way that he's managed players and brought players back into the fold, i.e. Anthony Ralston. Ralston was a goner last summer. For most of us, we would have been fine with him leaving. And then he turns in his best season in a Celtic jersey, one of the best seasons I've seen from a Scottish Celtic player for a long, long time, in terms of, not just in terms of like the goals that he scored. Obviously, he scored crucial goals, not just the Ross County one, there was the Hibs one as well. I'm sure there was a few others. He did not score about 4 or 5. And then the assists as well. His assist at Dundee, when he left Charlie Adam on the deck. There was his all-round performance was great. So Postecoglou has got evidence there, a body of evidence there to show that if you're willing to work and put the hard yards in, then you'll be in his team. So you just have to then question whether Julien, coming back from his injury, has shown that same desire, that same hunger, or if he's not. And I would be, has Julien had a chance? So I mean, of course he hasn't had a chance, but how could you possibly sacrifice your defence at such a crucial time in the season? Like, every game, as Ange Postecoglou pointed out, every game was important. Every time you got asked in a presser before, like say a Rangers game, he was like, yeah, this game's important, but so's next week and so's the week after, because they're all huge games and we have to win them all. We have to be near perfect. So why would he risk his near perfect record to accommodate a guy out of loyalty because he's been there prior to this season? I don't think so.
It's something that always struck me about Julien, and it was to do with the signing of Cameron Carter Vickers, basically. If they believed that Julien was going to come back, I don't think we would have signed Cameron Carter Vickers. I don't think we would have laid out on the wages and the the loan fee for Cameron Carter-Vickers. When people say, has Julian had a chance, I tend to agree with Lisboa 67 on this. I don't think Ange has much time for Julian, not his player. And I'm wondering if something's happened in that period before we bring in Cameron Carter-Vickers, had to go with Welsh and Beaton, that's made Ange Postecoglou's mind up on Christopher Julian previously before he actually came back. Because, as you say, it's a £7 million centre-half that we've got sitting there. It's a lot of money for Celtic. And I'm just wondering if there's something else. I mean, we know how this board work. And if Julian was 3 weeks away from fitness, right? And we were told that at the start, it says, he'll be back by the end of August. Then you bring in Cameron Carter-Vickers right on the last day. I wonder if there's something happened. I wonder if there's something happened there. I really do wonder if there's something which is that was when Julian's bridges were burnt.
Well, I mean, you say that, but then he did get brought on in that game against, was it Wraith Rovers in the Cup? So I always think, why would someone get any game time at all if they were, surplus to requirements or so far out of the picture? Was that like a test to see if he could actually still play? I mean, when you saw the game where he played in, was it the B team game? And he looked like, he was in Land of the Giants or something like that, because it's just like everybody around him was about half his height. It looked really odd. And, you wonder, why was he played in that game? Was it because we were worried we were going to need him for the first team? Or was that a kind of like, this is where you're at in the Celtic pecking order? That, I'm playing you with the boys, basically. So, I don't know. I don't have a big problem with Julian. Like, I'd like to see him stay if possible, but only if he wants to, only if there's that desire there. I don't
either, but he's in the last year of his contract, he's on big money. It looks like he's nowhere near the squad. When you look towards the tail end of last season, one of the quotes for Postecoglou was, I feel sorry for Stephen Welsh. He's never let me down, but I do not rotate the centre halves as much as I do anywhere else. He never mentioned Julian. It was Stephen Welsh, and Stephen Welsh has never let me down when I've actually called on him. And I thought that was a bit telling. I did think that was telling that there wasn't, Julian hasn't had a chance because two centre-halves have done great, blah, blah, blah. It was Stephen Welsh he was talking about. And as you say, Carter-Vickers was last minute. Last minute.
Like, you went to bed that night and then thinking that was us done, and then you wake up in the morning and we've signed Carter-Vickers. I mean, we had been linked with him. It wasn't completely out of the blue, but it was still quite a surprise to see that we'd actually... Imagine we hadn't got him at that time. Imagine we hadn't got Carter-Vickers and we'd gone in to that first half of the season. I don't think there's any way we would have won the league. No chance. Like, he was far too big for us in that first half of the season. I don't know if there was anybody there on the books that could have did the job that he did. I really don't think so. But that was Julian. In regards to other people who go, it's going to be difficult. I was watching Paul on Celtic Fans TV. He did a thing about the 5 players that he thought would go, but he did also discuss the difficulty in getting guys like Ajeti and Barkas off the wage bill. I mean, you're who's going to come in for these guys? They've not exactly covered themselves in glory in terms of what they've done while they're at Celtic. Ajeti's gone from being 7 million to West Ham to 5 million to us. Well, what's the next fee is not going to be 5 million. It's going to be half of that if you're lucky, because he's got no body of work to show while he's at Celtic. That he's a prospect and a decent signing, and it's just so strange when you get these anomalies of players that, like, on paper you think, wow, that's a really good signing, and to think that we could have had Ivan Toney instead, but we got Albion Ajeti, but nobody was that upset about it. Everyone was kind of like, oh, well, this guy could be really good for us, and this could be a kind of Chris Sutton style signing where we regenerate his career and reinvigorate him. But it's just not worked out, and it certainly didn't work out last season either. I mean, again, why was Ange Postecoglou able to, get a tune out of Turnbull and McGregor, Ralston, Beaton, Rogic, all these guys, Ayeti, nowhere to be seen. I mean, he started those first few games and played the pre-season friendlies, captain Celtic at one point in one of those games, and then completely falls away, back injured again, unreliable, and just doesn't contribute. So, I mean, that's a real tough one, I think, for the board, is that they've got a real problem here. Like, surely they're not going to pay these guys off. They're not going to do an Encham and rip up their contract. And there's the money.
You wouldn't think so. You would like to think some of these guys have still got credit in the bank. I'm going to bring up a couple of comments here who mention players, and I'll go through them. Retro Celtic, who goes? It's obvious. Barkas, right? With Barkas, I reckon he's got credit in the bank with teams in Greece. So you might get a nominal fee for Barkas. And this is us just fantasy football land here, JP. We're not saying aye or no. I think Julien will move probably back to France, or maybe low-end English Premiership, maybe Championship. Ball and golly, haven't got a clue where he's going to end up. Sorrow, he already attracted attention for the MLS. That could be a move for him. I'm going to leave James McCarthy because that's a completely different discussion. Mikey Johnson, again, I think I can see him going out on loan just because of the length of the contract that he's got at Celtic. And I can see him going on loan to another Scottish Premiership club, maybe even Fleetwood. He might end up down at Fleetwood with Scott Brown. Dembele, his contract's ended. His contract's end next week. Seemingly he was playing at Townhead 5-a-side AstroTurf on Tuesday night, him and his brother.
No way.
And their mates, aye. My neighbour was on the park next to them.
That's wild.
There you go. And Ayeti, right? Ayeti, for me, I think will get pre-season to prove that he can be worth in the squad. But I do reckon there's money in the bank with Ayeti back home in Switzerland. I do reckon that he's still got enough credit in the bank with clubs in Switzerland that we will get a fee for him if needed.
Yeah, well, the Dembele one, I don't see Dembele being a Celtic player next season. I mean,
he's not a Celtic player in 4 days' time. There is that, but I don't. It would be astonishing if all of a sudden we were to announce a picture of, Karamoko Dembele holding a strip with, I don't know, 3 years on the back of it or something like that. Can you really see him getting a contract this late into the fact that he's going to be out of contract? I just don't see it. It would have been announced by now.
I know.
It would have been done and dusted by now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he could definitely be considered somebody that will go. And do you know what? For all the fanfare about him, I genuinely don't think that he's. I'm not going to, lose any sleep over the fact that he'll go. I really don't. I've not seen enough from the guy to make me think, oh God, we're missing out on somebody here. We're missing out on somebody. I've said this before. There's been so many times players leave Celtic and they just go on to have sort of fair to middling careers. Especially players that go at this time of their career, or at this age. There's not a huge list of Celtic success stories of players that have left Celtic. Celtic will be the high watermark in their career. Like those games that he's come on and played at Celtic Park, they're potentially going to be the biggest crowds he'll ever play to. I mean, that's not being disrespectful. As being a realist, I think. And you've seen it many times that players go on. They'll maybe have like a half decent career, and I'm sure he'll be financially okay, but I don't think he'll ever reach the sort of heights. The one player that I did say I didn't think would be a success was Frimpong. I didn't think Frimpong would cut it, and he's proved me wrong. I genuinely thought he would, sort of be a bit part player at Leverkusen and not do the business. But fair play to him, he has, and been linked with. He's been linked with has he been linked with Real Madrid or something like that? I'm sure he's been linked with a couple of big sides anyway, which is, to me, is wild, because I didn't think he was that good at Celtic. I thought he was all right, but
all my days, JP, you admitted that you got something wrong on him. All my days.
Regularly.
Let's have a look at Michael McDonald. Scales. Somebody in the comment previously says Scales to go out on loan. Scales stays, improves as a person, a player. He goes on to be a Celtic legend. Liam Scales has not been seen since that Raith Rovers game. And he hasn't been out the squad. What do you think about him? He's still a young lad. He says that he came to play at centre half. He hadn't really played at centre half. He played at left back. If the rumours are to be believed, that we are looking for another left back. So is there room for him as a left-footed centre half?
I mean, I'd like to think so, especially, when he signed, and I watched his interview when he signed, I was really excited for him, because, you could tell that he was, genuinely chuffed to be signing for Celtic, and it was a big deal for him, and it was a big move. It's a huge move to go from where he was playing to Celtic, and I certainly like what I've seen of him. I don't think I've seen a few people saying he's absolutely terrible, and he shouldn't be anywhere near a Celtic side, which that is extremely harsh. And again, it's just social media patter I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a sort of groundswell of hate towards the guy or anything, but I think people want a better quality left back in to challenge Taylor, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's definitely something that should happen, in the same way that you've got Juranovic on the right and Ralston on the right. We've got Taylor on the left and nobody else on the left, as was shown in the semi-final, where we had to put Stephen Welsh. It was like, what was it? Square pegs and round holes in that semi-final extra time. Did Ralston play left and Welsh right? I can't even remember what happened in that. It was just chaos. And so the left back position is something that needs to be looked at. So if he is a centre half and can play at centre half, then if that's what he's kept there for, who knows? It just depends on what Ange Postecoglou thinks of him, I guess, because ultimately it's whether he's got the right character. Did Ange Postecoglou have that conversation with Liam Scales and Osaze Urhoghide? Did he get the opportunity to? They came in. Did they not come in before Postecoglou arrived? Were they not already in the door?
The two Sheffield Wednesday guys were.
Aye, that's what I mean. So, when Postecoglou gets the opportunity to sign somebody, from what I can gather is, it's either he's sought the player out or he's presented with the player and then he has a conversation with the player, i.e. Patrick Roberts was a no. He spoke to Patrick Roberts and just decided against that. Spoke to Joe Hart and went, you'll do it for me, and brought Joe Hart in. And, so these conversations he has where he makes a judgment on someone's character, he didn't have those conversations with Liam Scales and Osaze.
I think Scales was in the pipeline before one of these overall project signings.
Oh yeah, I'm getting mixed up. Liam Shaw, sorry, it was Liam Shaw. I mean, what happened to him? Did he even get a game at Motherwell? I don't even know.
I think he got injured. Injured at Motherwell quite early doors.
All right.
I didn't see, based on what we hope maybe happens at the club at this precise moment in time, somebody like Liam Scales, Urhoghide and Liam Shaw, you're going, I can't see a future for you at Celtic. I really don't can he see that? With Scales, I'm going to go back into Scales. Robert Hyland comes in and tells us that he's sure that Scales will feature domestically next season. I maybe agree with that, but it might be for Motherwell or somebody like that. They might get a loan deal.
So many Irish fans. Like, I remember when we signed him, so many commenting, going, "This guy's a player. You might not think it, but you've got a player on your hands," and all this sort of stuff. And there you go, another one.
Boyle. There's loads of them in the comments, and I'm really quite glad that they're batting the lad up. Barry Ward reminds me that Scales played against Bodo Glimt and hasn't been seen since. It's a weird one. We've got a lot of unanswered questions in the squad, and I'm quite glad the person that mentioned Bodo Glimt, because, see, for them, they're a club for a wee country, but they're shown if you do things the right way, you can have moderate success in Europe. Edward Diver, here, there, it's there. Agree, Kev, Bodo are no fluke. They work a certain way, and that's the template we need under Ange Postecoglou. We need to actually have that and start taking scalps again in Europe, which we haven't done for the last couple of years. And as here's the other comment there.
This stat about not having won a knockout round since 2004 or whatever it is, or 2005, that has to be a goal and a sort of mission to eradicate that, next season, whether it's Europa League or Conference League or whatever. You want to get that monkey off your back.
Jerry McCann makes a very, very good point. Kev, let's be optimistic. We've never had a manager like Ange. And this is where, even though I've got doubts about going into the Champions League, all my doubts are actually based on over recent history, JP, and what I mean, where it hasn't been fun. We've had a great night against Man City, but other than that, getting beat 5-0 off PSG and 7-0 away is not fun. But when we played...
Kev, it was 7-1.
7-1. I forgot Dembele scored. And so Postecoglou, no, we're going into the Champions League with a manager who's never managed in the Champions League, and we've got to remember that as well. Strange love the doctor. I'm not entertaining any limitations this season. Just keep at it. Just keep it simple and add the points up at the end of the season and see where we are. Stephen Kenny, member of the Grangeworth number 1 CSC, trust the process, which seems to be the new keep the faith. David Bradley, I'm going to bring this up, and this, Kev, Ange will need to learn to change it now in the CL, or it could be a heavy humping again. I've seen this narrative quite a few times coming, and David has a point that if we try to go toe-to-toe with some of these bigger teams, that it may end up in an absolute mess. But I think for what we've learned for Ange Postecoglou, even in Europe this season, and what he called a Champions League group this season, where we ended up with 9 points, as Alistair Ross points out, we got more points than Rangers in the Europa League. We were unlucky not to qualify. Martin Bickett, 9 points in the Europa League, wasn't shabby. Ange Postecoglou will probably point to that and point to his record with Australia and stuff like that and go, I've been fine doing things my way for 25 years and I'm not going to change now.
No, totally. And, if you said to me that we were going to have games like away to Betis, away to Leverkusen in the Champions League, where we are making a fight of it, say we go away to, I don't know, Bayern Munich, let's say. Say we go away to Bayern Munich and we get beat 3-2. I'm okay with that. I mean, at least we're going and showing that we can do something. We got beat 3-2 at Leverkusen. We were winning in that game. We were 2-1 up, and we were looking good. I remember watching that in Gracie's and just being like, wow, this is unbelievable. The goals that we scored as well were really good.
What about the double header against Ferencváros? Yeah. Completely outplayed them twice. And that's the teams that you're looking at. You're going, well, Ferencváros,
we're in the Champions League.
They put us out.
And then made the Champions League proper. I mean, they obviously got absolutely horsed in the Champions League. I think they finished on 0 points maybe in that season. I can't remember if they got anything. But, we did enough in the Europa League. We get slagged so badly for a European performance this season. That was a team that was very early on in its sort of genesis, and still getting to know how each other's played, and we still managed to put points on the board. So it does augur well for going into Europe next season, but we just need the draw to be a bit kinder, I think. As much as I'm saying that, I would really, really love to get Real Madrid. I said that the other week there. I would just love to see us play them, because these things, they don't come. I mean, it's been 5 years since we've been in the Champions League. We're not here forever. You want to see these games in your lifetime. And the last time we played Real Madrid I was one, I think, the last time we played Real Madrid. So you just want to have these experiences and experience different cities and going away with Celtic to different cities, because there's no bigger buzz than being in that away support in a European city, and having an absolute ball in a place where you've never been to before, and you see how the locals react and things like that. Like being in Munich a few years ago for that away game, was in that square in the middle of the day. It was just like sunshine, and got a picture of an old German boy opening a bottle of wine for my mate Michael, and I look at that picture, I just think how great an atmosphere it was, with no trouble at all. That's what you want.
It is what you want. It's what we're looking forward to. We're back at the top table of European football, and whether we're ready for it or not is a question that will only be answered once the games kick off. D. Boyle comes in and goes, "Come on, Kev, have faith." Aye, we need to have faith, as I say. Whether we're ready for the Champions League or not is yet to be seen. Let's see what else we got here. Daniel Mack points out that Ange Postecoglou says that he doesn't own a bus. The Urban Coolshay comes in and says we should own a bus rather than using Parker Hamilton's. And Frank Brennan comes in, and Frank's not usually a prophet of doom, but he's sometimes one of the more realistic commenters. He says, "The harsh realities of football and life in Europe, but most sadly, we are not going to win any kind of European knockout tie next season. The fact is, we're starting off as a top 4 team in the Champions League tie, in a Champions League campaign, which means it could be very difficult to get out the group." But Strangelove the Doctor actually points out a point that I think all Celtic fans will need to hang on to, that Bodo were in year 4 of their process. And we're only in year 2 of Postecoglou. And while we all got very, very excited towards the end of the season winning that title, I think sometimes we need to have a look at we need to actually look at the bigger picture and go, it could be another wee roller coaster in Europe next year before we actually get it right.
I've made a mental screenshot of Frank Brennan's comment there. We will not, capital letters, not win a European knockout tie next year. A mental screenshot. So that's there. I'll remember that, because I don't know. I think that could be our goal. Like I said, Europa League, Conference League, whatever it is. But to be in Europe beyond Christmas is the first thing, and then the second thing is to win a tie and then see where that takes us. Because we saw this season that if the dice fall in the way that you want it to, we beat that Rangers team in over 38 games, and they got to a European final. I mean, is that being lost on people here? And I'm talking about from their side as well. We were the champions this season, in a season where they went to a European final and beat teams like Borussia Dortmund, Leipzig. But they got very fortunate with Braga, I think, and with Red Star Belgrade. Neither of those two teams are, amazing European opponents. So, but hats off to them. The Dortmund and Leipzig results were phenomenal, like big scalps, no doubt about it. But it just I think it's about the luck of your draw and how you progress and you build up momentum. And our momentum was absolutely popped at home against Bodo. We got beat 3-1. And
definitely.
You knew after that game, like, there's no way we are going over there and beating them. And in their home ground, where they've like had a really good record in recent seasons in Europe, and they were clearly a disciplined side. There's no way we were overturning that result, but that result at home could have gone another way. We could have played better that night. We could have won that game. If we'd have won that game at home, the away game's a different story. But it just so happened that, as Ange Postecoglou has pointed out many times, each game that he plays is its own individual, almost like a movie, and the ending will change in every game. It's not always straightforward. And I think, that game at home could have gone a different way. It didn't, and that was the end of it. It was for me. It was over after that first leg. I didn't have any real hope of that second leg. My mate Michael was trying to convince me to go to the away leg the night before, saying, "I've got a spare ticket. We'll just get a flight." And I was like, "Michael, I'm not spending nearly $1,000 to go to Norway for a day. I'd quite like to go there for like a few days and enjoy the sights, but I'm not going for a day."
For me, if we would have went across there 2-1 down, there was still a chance. The fact is, we lost that third goal through a fluky deflection. That deflection, 9 out of 10 times, that goes out for a shy, it goes out for a bike, but it ends up in the back of the net. At that point, I was thinking to myself, well, the football gods have said to us, this is no your time to get through this tie with that ending up into the back of the net. But we can only hope for better. Studs Lanigan is pointing out that Frank Brennan is now in JP's little black book. Is that alongside all your Twitter screenshots?
Yeah, I've got a few of them.
You have got a few of them.
Drip feeding them into the ether over the last few days. There's some ones in there that have not been published yet. That honestly, some people should really think long and hard before they post things on Twitter, because they always come back to bite you. If there's a 50-50 in a tweet, then it can come back to haunt you.
That's a life lesson lots of people can learn from.
Yeah.
Kieran, year 2, we're at 9 months. Aye, we are only at 9 months in Ange Postecoglou's reign, and I'm going to end on a real positive note. Dermot Celtic. Some people saying Ange couldn't win the league now, bagging our European champion chances. I trust Ange to build a team for Celtic fans to be proud of and not talk down. We all trust Ange to build up. We all trust Ange to build that team, Dermot, and that's all that we want. JP, it's been utterly amazing. I've just noticed about an hour and 7 minutes. So
I told you we'd just be talking nonsense. I knew it. There was no agenda. There was no
agenda, no skip, no nothing. JP, brilliant as usual. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Please give us a like and subscribe. Have a great day. Have a nice weekend, and I'll speak to you all next week. See you all later.